My stepdaughter looked me straight in the eye and said her real dad would still be alive if I hadn't taken her mom, and I had no idea what she was talking about. For a few seconds I honestly thought I misheard her. Kids say dramatic things sometimes, especially at 12. Hormones, school drama, TikTok psychology, whatever. But the way she said it wasn't emotional. It was calm. Certain. Like she was stating a fact everyone else already knew. And the worst part was my wife didn't correct her. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 40, a city building inspector in Columbus, Ohio. My life is painfully normal. Paperwork, site visits, coffee that tastes like burnt plastic from a government office machine. I'm not a dramatic guy. I don't cheat, I don't gamble, I don't even speed because I'm the kind of loser who knows how much tickets cost. 8 years ago I married Megan. She was a widow with a 4-year-old daughter named Ava. Now Ava is 12, in middle school, and until a few months ago she called me Dad. I never pushed for that title. Never asked for it. The first time she said it, she was 6 and half asleep on the couch after a movie night. She mumbled, "Dad, can I have water?" And Megan just froze in the doorway behind me like someone had pressed pause on her. Later she cried quietly in the kitchen, hugging me like I'd done something heroic instead of just existing. I always tried to be careful about her biological father, Thomas. Megan told me he died suddenly when Ava was very young. Some kind of medical issue. She didn't like talking about it, so I didn't push. There were a few photos in a box. Him holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket, him standing in front of a pickup truck. One wedding picture where they both looked too young to be making promises that big. I told Ava growing up that she had 2 dads in different ways. One who gave her life, and one who got to be here with her. She seemed okay with that. Curious sometimes, but not upset. Until recently. For years, we were stable. Not perfect, not some Instagram family, just solid. Saturday mornings at the same diner. Soccer games where half the parents yelled like it was the Super Bowl. Science projects that somehow always involved glue guns and mild panic at 11 p.m. the night before they were due. I was there for all of it. Parent-teacher conferences, dentist appointments, fevers at 2 a.m., the time she threw up in my car and cried because she thought I'd be mad about the upholstery. I told her cars can be cleaned, kids can't be replaced. She hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. That kid trusted me. Which is why the change hit like a truck. It didn't happen overnight. It was subtle at first, the way cracks form in a windshield. You don't notice until the light hits it wrong and suddenly it's everywhere. She stopped sitting next to me on the couch. Started choosing the far end like there was an invisible barrier. When I'd ask about her day, she'd say, "Fine," without looking up. If I tried to joke with her, she'd give this tight little smile that didn't reach her eyes. I told myself it was middle school. Everyone says that's when kids pull away. Megan agreed. "She's just growing up," she said. "Don't take it personally." I tried not to. But it felt personal. The first time she called me Daniel instead of Dad, I actually looked over my shoulder to see if someone else had walked into the room. "Daniel, Mom said dinner's ready." Not mean. Not sarcastic. Just distant. Like I was a substitute teacher. I waited for Megan to correct her. She didn't. She just kept stirring whatever was in the pan like nothing unusual had happened. That should have been my first warning. Over the next few weeks it escalated. Ava started eating at different times, claiming she had homework or wasn't hungry. If Megan and I were watching TV, she'd stay in her room. Family outings became optional, then rare, then non-existent. But here's what really messed with my head. She wasn't acting out in general. Her grades were fine. Teachers said she was polite. She still laughed on the phone with friends. It wasn't depression or rebellion. It was targeted. At me. If I walked into a room, she found a reason to leave. If I asked a question, she answered Megan instead. Once I said goodnight, and she pretended not to hear me even though we were 3 feet apart. I asked Megan what was going on more than once. She always had an explanation. Preteen mood swings. Friend drama. School stress. She'll come around. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. Then came the dinner at my parents' house, the night everything cracked open. My parents live about half an hour outside the city in this quiet little town, where nothing ever changes. Same diner, same hardware store, same people who've known each other since the Reagan administration. They adore Ava. My mom still buys her craft kits, and too many cookies, like she's 8 instead of 12. Dinner itself was normal. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, my dad telling the same 3 stories he always tells. Ava was quiet but polite. "Yes, ma'am. No, thank you." That kind of thing. Nothing alarming. It was the drive home where things went wrong. Megan was talking about maybe moving next year. Nothing definite, just floating the idea of a bigger house closer to the hospital where she works. She said it casually, like you talk about maybe repainting a room someday. From the back seat, Ava said, "I'm not moving with you." The tone made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. Flat. Final. Megan twisted around. "What do you mean, honey? You'd still go to the same school district." Ava stared straight ahead, not at either of us. "I don't want to live with him." The air in the car went weirdly heavy. "With who?" Megan asked, though we both knew. Ava finally looked at me through the rearview mirror. Not angry. Not crying. Just cold. "With the man who ruined Mom's life." I slammed the brakes harder than I meant to, and pulled onto the shoulder. A horn blared behind us as someone swerved around. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice coming out thinner than I wanted. She shrugged like she'd commented on the weather. "Nothing. Don't do that," I said. "You said something." She turned her head toward the window. "Forget it." Megan reached back like she might touch her shoulder, then stopped halfway. "Ava, that's not true. You know that." But she didn't explain why it wasn't true. She didn't correct the idea itself. Just said the words and let them hang there. The rest of the drive home was silent, except for the sound of tires on asphalt. As soon as we pulled into the driveway, Ava got out, walked past us, and went straight inside without another word. Her bedroom door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a slam. I stayed in the car for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel. "What was that?" I asked finally. Megan let out a long breath. "I don't know. She's been moody lately. Moody doesn't usually involve accusing me of ruining your life. She probably heard something online," she said quickly. "Kids watch weird stuff." That explanation felt flimsy, but I didn't have anything better. Inside, Ava's door stayed shut. Megan knocked once, got no answer, and said, "She just needs space." I stood in the hallway staring at that closed door, feeling like something important had shifted, and I didn't understand how. At the time, I told myself it was just a bad moment. Families have those. Kids say things they don't mean. I had no idea that was only the beginning, that within weeks she'd stop calling me dad entirely, stop eating with us, stop looking at me like I was safe, and eventually say something so specific, so personal, that it would make me question not just my role in this family, but the story I'd been told about how it started. Because if what she believed came from Megan, then either my wife said something reckless in anger, or she'd been hiding something from me for years. And I still didn't know which possibility scared me more. After that night in the car, I kept waiting for things to go back to normal. They didn't. If anything, it was like Ava had crossed some invisible line and couldn't step back over it. Before, she'd been distant but polite. After that, she became careful. Like she was navigating around something dangerous. Or someone. Me. She stopped saying good morning. Not in a dramatic way. She just walked past me at the kitchen counter like I was part of the furniture. If I asked how she slept, she'd mumble, "Fine," without eye contact. If I asked about school, she'd say, "It was okay," and immediately turn to Megan to talk about something else. The first time she deliberately avoided sitting next to me at dinner, I told myself I was imagining it. We have a 4-seat table, nothing fancy, just a square thing from IKEA. Ava always sat to my right. Always. It had become one of those tiny routines families don't even notice. That night, she pulled out the chair across from Megan instead. Not a big deal. Kids switch seats sometimes. But the next night, she did it again. And the next. By the end of the week, my chair felt like it had a quarantine zone around it. I mentioned it to Megan quietly while doing dishes one night. "Is Ava mad at me about something?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Megan didn't even look up from drying plates. "No. Why would you think that? She barely talks to me. She's 12, Daniel. That doesn't explain why she won't sit near me." Megan sighed, the kind of sigh that says you're making a big deal out of nothing. "She's growing up. Kids pull away. You can't expect her to stay a little kid forever." Maybe she was right. I don't have biological kids, so what do I know about normal developmental phases? But this didn't feel like growing independence. It felt like avoidance. A few days later, I came home early from work because a site inspection got canceled. I walked into the house around 3, expecting it to be empty. Instead, Ava was at the kitchen table doing homework. "Hey," I said, setting my keys down. "Didn't know you'd be home already." She jumped like I'd startled her, even though I hadn't been loud. "Oh. Hi." Not Dad. Not even Daniel. Just, "Hi." I grabbed a glass of water and tried again. "What are you working on?" "Math." "Need help?" "No." One word answers. Eyes glued to the paper. I stood there for a few seconds, feeling weirdly intrusive in my own house. "Okay. Well, I'll be upstairs if you do." She nodded without looking up. As I turned to leave, I heard her chair scrape back slightly, like she was preparing to move. Out of curiosity, I paused at the base of the stairs. The moment I was out of sight, she got up and left the kitchen entirely. I heard her bedroom door close. That's when it really sank in. She wasn't just being distant. She didn't want to be alone with me. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain kept running through possibilities, like a broken search engine. Did I yell at her recently? Forget something important? Embarrass her in front of friends? Ground her unfairly? I couldn't think of anything. I asked Megan again the next day, this time more directly. "Is something going on at school? Bullying or something?" "She hasn't said anything," Megan replied, scrolling on her phone. "She won't even be in the same room as me." Megan looked up then, annoyance flickering across her face. "You're exaggerating." "I'm not. She just wants space. From me specifically." That made her jaw tighten. "Daniel, you're taking this personally when it's not about you." I didn't say what I was thinking, that it felt very much about me. A week later came the name thing. I was in the garage fixing a loose hinge on the side door when she stepped in. "Daniel, Mom says dinner's ready." For a second, I thought she was talking to someone else. There was no one else there. I wiped my hands on a rag and turned. "You mean Dad?" She blinked like she hadn't realized what she said. "Oh, yeah. Sorry." But she didn't sound sorry. Just neutral. Something inside me twisted, but I tried to keep it light. "You can still call me Dad, you know." She shrugged. "Okay." And walked away. No correction. "No, Dad." Just silence. That night at dinner I waited to see if she'd slip and say it again. She didn't say my name at all. If she needed something, she asked Megan to ask me. "Mom, can he pass the salt?" Not even looking at me while she said it. I handed it over without comment, but my chest felt tight, like I'd just run upstairs. Later, after Ava went to bed, I asked Megan if she'd noticed. "Not really," she said. "Why are you so hung up on this?" "Because it hurts." She looked surprised, like that hadn't occurred to her. "She doesn't mean anything by it." "How do you know?" Megan hesitated just long enough for it to register. Then she said, "Because she's a kid." That wasn't an answer. The next morning, I overheard something that made my stomach drop. I was in the hallway outside the kitchen, about to walk in, when I heard Ava's voice, low, tense. "I don't want to go with him," Megan replied softly. "You won't be alone. It's just a quick trip." "I don't care." A pause. Then Ava again, quieter but sharper. "I don't trust him." I froze. Not trust me? For what? Megan said something too quiet for me to hear, then Ava muttered. "You said I didn't have to pretend." That line stuck in my brain like a splinter. I stepped into the kitchen then, making noise on purpose so they'd know I was there. Both of them looked up like they'd been caught doing something. "Morning," I said carefully. Ava grabbed her backpack immediately. "I have to go." School didn't start for another half hour. She left without finishing breakfast. I looked at Megan. "What was that about?" She avoided my eyes, busying herself with rinsing a coffee mug that was already clean. "Nothing. She's just being dramatic. She said she doesn't trust me." Megan's shoulders stiffened. "You must have misheard." I knew I hadn't. But I also knew pushing right then would turn into a fight, and I still didn't even know what I'd be fighting about. So I let it go. Which, in hindsight, might have been my biggest mistake. Because every time I chose not to push, whatever story Ava believed about me had more time to take root. More time to grow. More time to turn me from Dad into someone she watched carefully from across the room, like I might suddenly reveal why I was dangerous. And I still had absolutely no idea what crime I was being silently convicted of. The next explosion didn't happen during some big dramatic moment. It happened on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday night, which somehow made it worse. We'd had dinner, or technically Megan and I had dinner. Ava said she wasn't hungry and stayed in her room. That had become routine by then. She'd wait until we were done, then come out later and microwave something while pretending not to notice us. I tried not to watch the clock anymore, but I still noticed the patterns. The exact moment our plates were cleared. The way her door would open just a crack first, like she was checking if it was safe. That night, I decided to stop pretending everything was fine. When she came into the kitchen, I stayed at the table instead of going to the living room. She froze the second she saw me still sitting there. "Hey," I said gently. "Can we talk for a minute?" She didn't answer. Just walked to the fridge, opened it, stared inside like she was solving a complex puzzle. "I feel like you've been upset with me," I continued. "And I don't know why. If I did something, I want to fix it." She grabbed a yogurt, shut the fridge, and kept her back to me. "You didn't do anything," she said flatly. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. "Then why won't you even look at me?" Silence. The hum of the refrigerator sounded weirdly loud. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm. "Ava, I miss you. We used to hang out all the time. Now it feels like you hate me." Her shoulders tensed at that word. Hate. She turned around then, finally facing me, and the expression on her face made my stomach drop. Not anger. Not sadness. Resentment. "You know what you did," she said. My brain went completely blank. "I don't. That's why I'm asking." She laughed once, but there was nothing amused about it. "Right. I swear I don't." For a second, she looked almost uncertain, like she didn't expect me to deny it. Then her face hardened again. "Mom told me everything." "Everything about what?" I felt cold all over. "What did she tell you? That you were around before my dad died?" The words didn't even register at first. They didn't fit into any version of reality I had. "I'm sorry, what?" She crossed her arms. "You heard me. That's not true." Her eyes narrowed, studying my face like she was searching for cracks. "She said you were her friend from work. That you came over a lot. That things got complicated." Complicated? My mouth went dry. Megan had always said she barely dated anyone before me because she was grieving. She never mentioned some close male friend hanging around her house while she was still married. "I didn't even meet your mom until months after." "Stop," Ava snapped. "Just stop lying." That word hit harder than anything else she'd said. "I'm not lying. She said you basically replaced him," Ava continued, her voice shaking now, anger bleeding through the calm. "That you were just waiting." "Waiting? Waiting for what? For him to die?" "That's not how it happened," I said, but it came out weak, defensive. "Then how did it happen?" she demanded. I opened my mouth and realized I didn't actually know the full story. Only the version Megan told me. The one I'd never questioned. "We met through a friend," I said finally. "Months later." Ava stared at me like she didn't believe a single word. "She also said," Ava continued quietly, "that I shouldn't forget who my real family is." Something inside my chest twisted painfully. "I never tried to replace your family," I said. "I just wanted to be part of it." She shook her head slowly. "You're not." Then she said the sentence that still wakes me up at night sometimes. "My dad would still be here if you hadn't taken Mom." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. "What does that even mean?" I whispered. But she was already backing away, clutching the yogurt like a shield. "You know what it means." "I don't." My voice came out louder than I intended. She flinched. That alone made me feel like garbage. "I'm not mad," I said quickly, softer. "I'm just confused. Please, Ava, talk to me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just looked at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. "I don't feel safe talking to you," she said. Safe. The word echoed in the kitchen like a gunshot. Before I could respond, she turned and hurried down the hallway, disappearing into her room. The door slammed this time. I stood there alone, staring at the empty doorway, trying to piece together how my life had turned into something I didn't understand. When Megan came home from her shift about an hour later, I was still sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. She flicked on the light and jumped. "Daniel? Why are you sitting here like that? We need to talk," I said. Her face immediately went guarded. "About what?" "About what you told Ava." A long pause. "What do you mean?" "She said you told her I was around before her dad died." Megan's eyes dropped to the counter. "She misunderstood. That's not what it sounded like. She's 12. Kids twist things. She said you told her I replaced him." Megan rubbed her temples like she had a headache. "We had an argument. She was asking a lot of questions about her father and I didn't handle it well. So you told her I was basically waiting for him to die?" "I didn't say it like that," she snapped. "Then how did you say it?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I said you were a friend who helped me through a hard time," she said finally. "And that things moved quickly after. After he died? She didn't answer immediately, and that silence said more than anything else. After he died, right? I pressed. Daniel, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. My heart started pounding. It matters to me. He's gone, she said sharply. You're here. That's what matters. That's not what I asked. Megan crossed her arms, defensive now. Why are you interrogating me? Because our daughter thinks I destroyed her family. She's emotional. She'll calm down. She said she doesn't feel safe around me. That finally made Megan look up, alarm flashing across her face. She said that? Yes. Megan swallowed hard. She didn't mean it like that. How else could she mean it? She's just confused. About what? Megan opened her mouth, then closed it again. I'm tired, she said finally. Can we not do this tonight? And that was it. Conversation over. Answers withheld. She went upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen again, staring at nothing. For the first time in our entire relationship, I realized there might be parts of her past I had never actually been invited to see. And if Ava's version of events came from Megan, even distorted, then the foundation of our family might not be grief and healing like I always believed. It might be something messy, something unresolved, something that made a 12-year-old girl look at the man who raised her and see not a father, but an intruder. After that conversation, something shifted inside me. Up until then, I'd been operating under the assumption that this was a misunderstanding, a kid twisting words, a stressed mom saying the wrong thing, something that could be smoothed over with time and patience. But Megan's refusal to answer a simple question kept echoing in my head. After he died, right? She hadn't said yes. She hadn't said no either. Just, it doesn't matter. Except it did matter. Because if the timeline wasn't what I believed, then I didn't just marry a widow. I married someone whose past I didn't actually understand. For the next few days, I watched her differently. Not suspicious exactly, more like I was trying to see if there were pieces of her I'd overlooked all these years. Megan is very organized. Not in a cute Pinterest way, but in a controlled, almost clinical way. Bills filed, drawers labeled, paperwork sorted into neat folders. Our house doesn't feel cold, but it definitely feels curated. Like nothing chaotic is allowed to exist for long. Which is why it struck me as strange that I had never seen much about Thomas outside that small box of photos from years ago. No framed pictures around the house. No stories about him beyond vague. He was a good man. No visits to a grave on anniversaries. Ava didn't talk about him much either, which I'd assumed was because she was too young to remember. Now I wasn't so sure. One afternoon, while Megan was at work and Ava was at school, I found myself standing in front of the hall closet where we keep old paperwork. I wasn't planning to snoop. I told myself I was just checking something. Making sure there weren't documents Ava might have found that confused her. That was the excuse anyway. Inside were tax returns, insurance policies, appliance manuals, all the boring adult artifacts of a stable life. I flipped through folder after folder, feeling ridiculous. Then I found one labeled simply, Collins. My stomach dropped a little. Inside were hospital bills, some legal-looking documents, and a death certificate copy. I hesitated before unfolding it, like I was about to violate something sacred. Thomas Collins. Date of death. Cause listed as cardiac arrest due to an undiagnosed condition. Everything looked official. Legitimate. So why did I still feel uneasy? Tucked behind the certificate was something else. A folded sheet of paper, creased like it had been opened and closed many times. It wasn't legal paperwork. It looked like a printout of an email. I almost put it back. I should have put it back. Instead, I opened it. The message itself was short. Not romantic. Not explicit. But personal enough to make my pulse spike. It was from Megan, to me. Dated nearly a month before the date on the death certificate. My brain struggled to process that. We hadn't met until months later. At least that's what I'd always believed. The email read something like, Thank you for checking on me today. I don't know what I would do without someone to talk to right now. Please don't feel guilty for stopping by. It meant a lot. No context. No explanation. Just those lines. But the timestamp was unmistakable. I felt like I was holding evidence from a different version of my life. I didn't remember this email. Maybe we'd exchanged messages through a friend? Maybe it was forwarded later? My brain started constructing explanations as fast as it could, each one weaker than the last. Then I noticed something else. At the bottom of the printout was a reply from me. You don't have to go through this alone. I'll come by tomorrow after work. Tomorrow. After work. Come by. My hand started shaking. I had no memory of this. None. But it had my name, my email address, my signature line from the company I worked at back then. It was real. Which meant I had been at her house while Thomas was still alive. Or at least not officially dead yet. I refolded the paper carefully and slid it back into the folder, my heart hammering like I'd just run a marathon. The closet suddenly felt too small, like the walls were pressing in. I sat on the hallway floor for a long time, trying to reconcile the man I believed I was with the implication of that document. Had I been some kind of emotional support friend while her husband was dying? That wouldn't be wrong. People lean on others during crisis. But why hadn't she ever told me? Why had the story always started after his death? When Megan got home that evening, I couldn't look at her the same way. Every casual movement, setting down her purse, asking about my day, kicking off her shoes, felt like part of a performance I'd suddenly realized I didn't understand. "You look tired," she said, touching my shoulder. I flinched before I could stop myself. Her hand froze in midair. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. She studied my face for a moment, clearly not believing me, but she didn't push. That was Megan's way. Avoid confrontation unless absolutely necessary. At dinner, Ava barely spoke as usual. She kept her eyes on her plate, responding to Megan in short answers, acting like I wasn't even there. The silence felt heavier now, loaded with meaning I couldn't decode. After Ava went to her room, I followed Megan into the kitchen. "I found the Collins folder today," I said. She stiffened immediately. "Why were you looking through that?" she asked, not turning around. "I was trying to understand what Ava might have seen." A long pause. The sound of running water filled the room as she rinsed dishes that didn't need rinsing. "Did you find anything interesting?" she asked finally, her tone carefully neutral. I swallowed. "I found an email." The water stopped. Slowly, she set the plate down and turned to face me. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't guilty either. It was tired. Like she'd been expecting this moment eventually. "That was a long time ago," she said quietly. "You told me we met months after he died." Her eyes dropped to the floor. "That's when we started dating." "That's not what I asked." Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. "I was helping you," I said. "While he was still alive." "Yes." The word landed like a brick. "Why didn't you ever tell me that?" "Because it didn't matter." "It matters to Ava." "She shouldn't have seen that." "That's not the point." My voice cracked, and I forced myself to lower it. The last thing I wanted was Ava overhearing another argument about her father. "What exactly was I to you back then?" I asked, quieter now. "A friend? A co-worker? Something else?" Megan rubbed her arms like she was cold. "You were someone who showed up when everyone else disappeared." "That doesn't answer the question." She looked up at me then, eyes glossy but not quite crying. "Thomas was sick for a long time. Angry. Distant. Our marriage wasn't good at the end. So you leaned on me?" "Yes." "Emotionally?" "Yes." "Only emotionally?" Her jaw tightened. "That's not a fair question." It felt like the room tilted slightly. "I deserve to know what role I played in my own marriage," I said. Megan didn't answer. She just stared at me with this exhausted expression, like she didn't have the energy to lie, but also didn't want to tell the truth. Finally she said, very quietly, "Nothing happened the way Ava thinks it did." That wasn't reassuring. "Then tell her that," I said. "She wouldn't understand." "Try." Megan shook her head slowly. "You don't know how much she idolizes him. If she thinks I betrayed him..." Her voice broke off. "So instead you let her think I did?" She didn't respond. And in that silence, something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet fracture that told me things weren't going to go back to the way they were. Because whether anything inappropriate had actually happened or not, the version of events living in Ava's head painted me as the man who swooped in and replaced her father. And the worst part was I couldn't even say, with complete certainty, that version was wrong. I went to bed that night lying on the very edge of the mattress, staring at the ceiling while Megan slept with her back to me. For the first time since we'd gotten married, the space between us felt less like comfort and more like distance. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever truth existed about the past, I was only seeing the safest fragments of it, the parts that didn't make anyone look too bad. Everything else was still buried somewhere. And now a 12-year-old girl was digging it up, piece by piece, and aiming the fallout straight at me. After that night, nothing in the house felt neutral anymore. It was like every room had a memory attached to it that I couldn't trust. The couch where Ava used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder. The kitchen table where we'd helped her glue together lopsided science projects. The hallway where she once measured herself against the wall every birthday, insisting I draw the line because Dad makes it official. Now she'd barely walk down that hallway if I was in it. Megan moved through the house carefully, like she was trying not to trigger an explosion. She kept conversations short, practical. Groceries, schedules, work shifts. Nothing emotional. Nothing about the past. Nothing about the future either, which somehow felt worse. We were coexisting, not living. Ava's behavior toward me didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened into something colder and more deliberate. Not tantrums, not yelling. Just quiet rejection. She stopped responding when I spoke to her directly. If Megan wasn't in the room, she'd pretend she didn't hear me at all. One evening I came home to find her struggling with a heavy box in the garage, a delivery Megan had forgotten to bring inside. Normally I would have just helped without thinking. "Need a hand?" I asked. She dropped the box immediately and stepped back like I had lunged at her. "I've got it. It looks heavy. I said I've got it." Her voice was tight, panicked around the edges. Not angry, scared. I backed off instantly, hands raised slightly like you do around a skittish animal. "Okay. Sorry." She dragged the box inside by herself, breathing hard, refusing to look at me. I stood there in the driveway long after she disappeared, feeling something hollow out inside my chest. That wasn't resentment anymore. That was fear. Later that night, I confronted Megan again, not loudly, not dramatically, just exhausted. "She's afraid of me," I said. Megan didn't deny it this time. "She's confused," she said quietly. "That's not confusion. That's fear. She'll get past it." "When?" My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. "Because I don't know how much longer I can live like this." Megan finally looked up, eyes red like she hadn't been sleeping either. "What do you want me to do, Daniel?" "Tell her the truth." Her expression hardened. "The truth isn't simple." "Then make it simple." "You don't understand." "You're right," I said. "I don't." "That's the problem." Silence filled the kitchen again, thick and suffocating. "She thinks you replaced him," Megan said finally. "She said that. She thinks if you hadn't been there, maybe things would have been different." "Different how?" "He died." That's not something another person causes just by existing. But I didn't say that out loud, because the way Megan said it made it sound like she wasn't entirely sure herself. "Did you tell her that?" I asked. "I told her I leaned on you before he died," she said slowly. "That I wasn't alone. And she took that as betrayal." Megan nodded, staring at her hands. "Then correct her." Megan shook her head again, almost imperceptibly. "If I tell her everything, she might hate me. And if you don't," I said quietly, "she's going to hate me." Megan closed her eyes, like she physically couldn't handle the choice in front of her. "I thought time would fix it," she whispered. Time. That word made something bitter rise in my throat. Time had only made it worse. A few days later, I came home from work earlier than usual because a job site got rained out. The house was quiet except for the TV murmuring in the living room. Ava was on the couch, scrolling on her phone. She didn't notice me at first. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at her, really looking. The kid I taught to ride a bike. The kid who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. The kid who once made me a Father's Day card covered in glitter that said, "Best dad ever," in crooked letters. She sensed me then and looked up. Her expression closed instantly. I almost turned around and left. But something in me snapped, not in anger, just in desperation. "Can we please talk?" I asked. She didn't answer. "I don't want to fight. I don't understand what you think I did." Her jaw tightened. "Mom already told you. She told me you're upset about how we met. That's all." "That's enough. Not for me." She stared at me, eyes shining with something fierce and hurt at the same time. "You weren't supposed to be there," she said. "Where?" "In our life." The words felt like a physical blow. "I didn't force my way in," I said quietly. "Your mom chose to be with me. She wouldn't have if he was still here. That doesn't mean I caused anything." Ava's voice rose for the first time. "You don't know that?" The raw emotion in that sentence stunned me. "What do you think I did?" I asked, my own voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, like saying it out loud might make it more real. Then she said, "I think you were waiting for him to be gone." Every instinct in my body screamed to defend myself, to argue, to list facts and timelines and logic. Instead I just felt tired. Bone deep tired. I didn't even know your mom when he was healthy, I said. You were there when he was dying. I was helping. You were replacing him. I shook my head slowly. No one can replace someone's dad. She looked at me like she wanted to believe that, but couldn't. You act like you saved us, she said quietly. But nobody asked you to. That hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. I didn't do it to be a hero, I said. I did it because I loved your mom. And because I loved you. She flinched at that word, loved, like it burned. You don't get to decide that, she said. Before I could respond, Megan walked in from the hallway, clearly having heard the raised voices. What's going on? Ava stood up immediately, putting distance between us. Nothing. That didn't sound like nothing. Ava grabbed her phone. I'm going to my room. She brushed past Megan without another word, leaving us alone in the living room. Megan looked at me, searching my face. What did you say to her? I asked her what she thinks I did. And? She thinks I was waiting for her dad to die. Megan went pale. She said that? Yes. Megan sank onto the couch like her legs stopped working. Oh God. Is she wrong? I asked. Megan looked up sharply. Of course she is. But you won't explain why. Her mouth opened, then closed. I realized then that I wasn't just asking about the past anymore. I was asking whether the story of our family had a version where I wasn't the good guy. Or at least not innocent. I don't know how to fix this, Megan said, her voice small and fragile in a way I'd never heard before. Neither did I. Because you can't fix something when the problem isn't just hurt feelings. It's a narrative. A story someone believes about you. And stories are stubborn. Especially when they come from the person a child trusts most. That night, I sat alone in the dark living room long after everyone went to bed, listening to the quiet sounds of a house that used to feel warm. I kept replaying everything in my head, the email, the hesitation in Megan's voice, the certainty in Ava's accusations. If Megan told her the full truth, Ava might hate her. If she didn't, Ava would keep hating me. And the worst part was realizing there might not be a version of the story where everyone comes out okay. I don't know if I should push Megan to tell Ava everything and risk blowing our family apart completely, or keep living as the villain in a story I don't even fully understand. Because right now, I'm sharing a home with a child I love who looks at me like I stole something from her, and a wife who seems more afraid of the truth than of losing me. And I honestly don't know which one hurts more, or how long a family can survive when nobody is saying what actually happened.